Okay, this is our first video, and we are going to be talking about what is statistics. It's part of Chapter 1, Exploring Data. This is Erin Sallette, and I hope that I have conquered some of the tech issues that I was having earlier, and let's hope that this is a good recording. If not, we will press on forward and improve as we go. So first, let's talk about the fact that our essential question is, what is statistics? We've seen it before in other classes, but in this class we're going to go a little bit more into depth. At the end of today's video, hopefully you will be able to define individuals and variables, distinguish between categorical and quantitative variables. You can define distribution and describe the idea behind inference. We'll get back to these at the end. But for starters, what is statistics? Well, as your book would tell you, it is the science of data. Singular of data is datum. Data means plural. But I figured I should give you a little bit extra with that definition. It's with the goal of making predictions, decisions, and inferences. It's not just data in itself. It has a purpose that we are trying to get to, other than examining the data. But the data examination process is what we call data analysis. And it's the process of organizing, displaying, summarizing, and asking questions about data. So there are many ways that we can do those things, but before we move forward, first let's talk about the definitions. Individuals, objects, people, animal things, these are the things that we are studying by use of data. So what we would like to examine further, those are our individuals. The variable are the characteristics of those individuals that we are looking at. What qualities or quantities defined and are characteristics of those variables. And we have a couple of types of variables that we can have here. One is called a categorical variable, and it puts the individuals into one of several groups or categories. And the other kind, by the way, there's another name that you can possibly see for categorical variable. It's called a qualitative variable, but for the purpose of the AP Stat exam, we're going to call it a categorical variable. That's the way you're going to see it all throughout this course. But if you saw it somewhere else, this is also called a qualitative variable. Then we have what's called a quantitative variable. This variable takes on numerical values for which it makes sense to find an average. So not just numbers, but numbers that can be averaged in a reasonable way. It makes sense to average someone's height with the heights of other people, but it does not make sense to average someone's zip code. That does not make any sense. So that's the difference between a categorical and a quantitative variable. It takes on different values, and so in our data analysis, what we are interested in is finding out how often it takes on each value, which brings us to the definition of distribution, which tells us exactly how many times it takes on each specific value. And there's many ways to show that. First, we can have a table. Here we've got a bunch of luxury cars, and those luxury cars have a characteristic here. That would be our variable, the miles per gallon. That's our variable of interest here. And our distribution allows us to take a look at this circumstance by maybe a graph of some sort, so like a dot plot in this circumstance. Allows us to take a look as to what this data distribution looks like. So how do we explore data? Well, first we're going to examine each variable by itself. Let's see, I see a Bentley Arnage. It gets 14 miles per gallon. That's going to take a bunch of trips to the gas station. Whereas I have another luxury car, let's see, A Jaguar has 25 miles per gallon. Jaguar XF, that gets 25 miles per gallon. So, not as many trips to the gas station. So we can look at each variable by itself by, maybe producing a graph. And then we can add some number summaries that we can use very quickly in our calculator just by entering our information into a table. And that's how we can come to that conclusion. This is largely just descriptive statistics. What we can do, though, is go further from this type of statistics into another kind, and this is from data analysis to inference. So we're taking our data analysis and going forward. So let's say we have a population, and we would like to know something about this population. However, the population is so large or so difficult to reach that we can't possibly poll every person in the population or collect the data from every single individual in this population. So what we do is we take a sample. The important thing about this sample is that it is a representative sample. That means it has to resemble the population. And there's ways that we are going to do this. We won't get to this until chapter 4, but we will make sure that it's a representative sample, and we perform our data analysis keeping the probability in mind and find an inference about the population. So we can make a conclusion about the population even though we only studied a sample. This is what's called inferential statistics. So we go from descriptive statistics into inferential just that way. So here's an example that you're going to find in your notes. This is a bunch of variables for people who are the subjects of a study. So we found from the individuals in the study the gender, the age, the race, whether or not they were a smoker, their systolic blood pressure in terms of millimeters of mercury, and their level of calcium in the blood in terms of micrograms per milliliter. So all we're asking here is which of these variables are categorical and which of them are quantitative. Now let's remember back to our definition. A categorical places an individual into one of several groups, and the quantitative has numerical values for which it makes sense to take an average. So gender, male and female, that's clearly categorical, not numerical values. Age, however, I can take the average age of somebody, of a group of people, and therefore age is a quantitative variable. Race is categorical. Whether or not someone is a smoker, another categorical variable. There's systolic blood pressure in terms of millimeters of mercury. That is quantitative. I can take average blood pressures here. And then I can also take an average level of calcium in the blood for the individuals in this set. So that's how we identify which type of variables are which. Here we have another example. And this is where in your notes you have a table, and that information is not on the screen at the moment. So what I will need you to do now is look at that table. Many people like to ride roller coasters. Amusement parks try to increase attendance by building exciting new coasters. The table below displays data on several roller coasters that were opened in 2009. So from what we have learned in definitions so far, let's see if you can answer A, B, and C. So hit pause on the video right now and try to answer A, B, and C. And once you've finished trying to answer A, B, and C, come back and see how your answers have stacked up. See whether or not you have the same answers. So pause. Okay, hopefully you have taken a minute to try to answer A, B, and C on your own. And let's see if your answers match up with what I have. So what individuals does this data set describe? Well, you can get that from the description above. This is about new roller coasters which opened in 2009. Specifically the ones that opened in 2009 are the ones we're studying here. So not just new roller coasters, but those who opened in 2009. Okay, clearly identify each of the variables, which are quantitative, and what units are the quantitative variables measured in. Okay. We have two categorical variables, You had type. It was either a wooden roller coaster or a steel roller coaster in this circumstance. Also, the design, it was either a sit-down or a flying roller coaster, and those, of course, were categorical. Whereas the height, measured in feet, the speed, measured in miles per hour, and the duration, measured in seconds, those are all quantitative variables. I can take averages of each of those groups. So those are made sense to be listed as a quantitative variable. Now, we're going to describe the individuals on the highlighted row. Well, the highlighted row was the prowler. So, the prowler is a 102.3 foot tall wood roller coaster. It seats its passengers in a sit-down style. The ride reaches a speed of 51.2 miles per hour and lasts for 150 seconds. You may not have it in exactly that order, but hopefully you have all that information which you were able to get from that table. So I hope you were able to be successful in getting those answers correct. At the end of today, you learned that a data set contains information on individuals, and the data gives us information in terms of one or more variables. Those variables can be categorical or quantitative. You should be able to tell the difference between those. The distribution of a variable describes what values it takes and how often it takes on those values. And inference is the process of making a conclusion about a population based on a sample set of data. So looking ahead, what we're going to do next, we're going to start working with bar graphs, pie charts, two-way tables, and conditional distributions. This is organizing and analyzing categorical data. So this is still in the descriptive statistics area. It's going to be called graphical displays specifically next. So how we are able to visually look at this information. Okay. And that's the end of today's lesson. So replay it as many times as you need and bring all your questions to class tomorrow. See you later.